Someone asked me the other day, and I told them I would, they were looking for anti-retention. That was supposed to be about counting information for unregistered. They said they would give it 2 weeks ago. I said, that doesn't sound familiar, but I will ask Mary tonight, or Patrick, and find out.
I'm feeling a little special. You're still sitting by me. I thought you might scoot over and I'd be able to grab by myself.
I will ask you.
No, they all have chocolate.
Oh God, I did a Girl Scout.
That's how long I want to be your friend.
Oh, please, not letting me know. You can tell them because you guys
Just keep talking.
You know what I mean?
That one I've got, I don't have to do it tomorrow. So he said, I'll have to mark it.
Did you get to the last stage of Lady Kate? Oh, I can only imagine.
Okay, right from the top.
So, like, if you got called up, you would just keep staying there until you get one shot. They said it was
Good evening. With it being 7 p.m., I will call the Francis House School District Board of Education meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led this evening by Jesus Cassis Sanchez and Dr. Candy Worley. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you both very much. As I'm sure many of you have heard on the news, we are going to begin our meeting this evening with a moment of silence in honor of the victims, students, staff, and families of the Parkland, Florida school shooting. Thank you. All right, on our agenda, we're moving into the recognitions portion. Mr. Lackman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. Here to introduce our student board representative for February is Sager Middle School Principal, Dr. Candy Worley.
Good evening, Board of Education and the Executive Cabinet. I am proud to introduce to you Jesus Casillas Sanchez, who is an 8th grade student at Sager Middle School. Jesus plays the clarinet in our band. He participates in cross country and enjoys his karate class and playing video games at home. His teachers describe him as kind, caring, and hardworking. He has many friends and is one of the most polite students in our school. Jesus Casillas Sanchez.
Are your parents here?
Yes, Mom is here. And bring your brother, bring your son certificate.
Kelly Miss Barber. Kelly Barber, you might want to.
Wait, the photo's not complete without the certificate.
One more.
All I know is this is recording.
Okay.
It's a different phone, I'm sorry.
Here,
Here,
photo. I got it. I can read. No, that's all I knew. Sorry.
And then one more, hold on. Another video. Beautiful, all right.
The Francis Howell School District is proud to announce that 4 teachers have earned or renewed their National Board certification this year, the highest credential in the teaching profession. The district now has 60 teachers that has achieved this distinction. The district congratulates Francis Howell North High School teacher Joelle Sanders Horner, FHSD's newest National Board certified teacher, as well as those who have renewed their certification. Angela Canule from Francis Howell Middle School. Angela, if you'd come up, please. And Julie Costello from the Early Childhood Center, and Lindsay Scheller from Francis Howell North. Our 2 Francis Howell North teachers couldn't be here tonight because they have parent-teacher conferences. National Board Certified teachers are highly accomplished educators who meet high and rigorous standards. The certification through the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards is a voluntary process in which teachers work to advance the quality of teaching and learning. Like board-certified doctors and accountants, teachers who achieve National Board certification have met stringent standards through intensive study, expert evaluation, self-assessment, and peer review. Angela Canule and Julie Costello.
Can I get you guys in the front row, just lie down just a little bit. Thank you.
The unusually cold winter weather this year has wreaked havoc on water mains across the region, and here in the Francis Howell School District, we have certainly had our share of issues as well. But thanks to our dedicated facility staff and the assistance of our contractors, we have survived multiple issues and still not lost 1 minute of instructional time. Guys, you all want to come up, please? Over the past 2 months, we've had water main breaks at Bryan, Causley, and at Sager. The break at Sager took place late in the afternoon, and facilities and operations employees worked through the night to ensure that the school had water the next morning. The worst incident occurred on the morning of January 2nd, when maintenance manager Dan Allison went to EC Meadows to check out a report of a water main break. When he walked in, he discovered 2 to 3 inches of water on the floor. After the water was shut off, 15 of our staff members were able to remove the majority of the water in 1 hour. CATCO was on site the next day, and the restoration process was complete within 36 hours of the original incident. Children returned to EC Meadows 12 hours after that. We wanted to take this opportunity to recognize all of the hardworking employees that braved the cold to wrangle the water and keep our doors open for our students. We have with us today, in no particular order, and I may or may not be right with this list, Dan Allison, raise your hand guys when you're here, come on up. Dan Allison, Tom Burrows, Alex Cassetta, Mike Dieters, Tom Rush, Perry Rossingmeyer, Mike Schwedeman, Derek Rush, Lance Barton, David Reinhold, and from CATCO, Rich Johns. Our water main break heroes, ladies and gentlemen. We have plenty of certificates with plenty of names. If they don't match up, we'll make it right later, guys. Rich Johns, we don't have one for Rich, I know that.
You guys got your certificate? You want to lie down so we can get a photo?
Oh, sure. Yep. I'll take place in Malcolm's place.
All right, you guys are gonna have front row's gonna have to give it.
Sideways a little bit. Squeeze in. Do the one knee thing. Might have to.
Act like you know each other.
Are we holding on?
One more. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you guys for your tireless efforts. Thank you, Mrs. Cope.
All right, Jesus, welcome to the dais. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight. You get to participate in our meeting in every way but voting. So if you have any questions at any time or any comments, you hit the button to speak, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Okay, welcome. All right, next on our agenda is, do we have any patrons' comments? Thank you. FHEA.
Good evening, President Cope and Board of Education and Executive Cabinet. I'm going to present something from Tri-County Labor Legislative Club. It's a local organization made up of union members from St. Charles County, Lincoln County, and Warren counties. Tri-County Labor works to elect people to office that care about skilled workers having livable wages. They are also all community members. And tonight, they are donating a $2,000 check to Lunch Heroes. And so they also do things within our community like food drives for youth in need. Fort Zumwalt School District, at Jardine Elementary, they did a food drive. St. Joachim and Ann, they do donations for Toys for Tots, Meals on Wheels, Jean Slay's Boys and Girls Club, Backstoppers, the Heart Association, Sickle Cell Foundation, MS Society, Faces of Our Children, and a variety of other things. And so they are really a big part of our community, and Steve Bailey, who I believe is the vice president. President now. And he read about this in the newspaper, and at our last meeting, they brought it up to donate to our school district for the students here. So I will give this to the money guy. Okay.
Anita, thank you very much, and Chad, that's a very generous donation. And for those in the audience who may not be familiar, our Lunch Heroes program is recently started, and it's a way that we can help those children in our district who may be struggling to pay for their school lunches. So we know how important it is for our kids to have a nutritious meal every day. It keeps them prepared to learn, which is the reason that they're in school. And so our PGOs have been very generous over the years. Our faculty in various times have done some things. And now this is a way for our community to help whenever they can. And so this will be very well used to really get to our kids and help make sure they're prepared to learn. So please convey our thanks to Tri-County and how much this really means to us. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. BSPA? SAA? Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mrs. Walker. By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda is the MSBA February Board Report.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of February. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at how school districts can meet the health and mental health needs of students through school-based health centers. There are about 37 such school-based centers in Missouri school districts right now, with another 7 in the planning stage. Research has shown addressing the health issues of students at school can improve attendance and academic success. MSBA formed a school-based health clinic task force more than a year ago to bring together schools, state agencies, and other service providers to share successful programs and forge partnerships that might allow more students greater access to the health and mental health services they need. During a recent meeting of that task force, Paula Fields, a senior program manager for the National School-Based Health Alliance, said partnerships with healthcare organizations are essential to success.
The schools will often bring the space and work with the sponsoring community partner who brings the medical services, the behavioral health service, employs that staff and provides the coverage needed and the policies. And they work together to identify where the most needs are and to target and work towards making everyone healthy so they're more ready to learn and have their ultimate chances for success.
Fields adds school leaders must take the initiative in working with healthcare organizations to communicate their goals and needs for an effective school-based health center. One of the major education issues being considered by the 2018 session of the General Assembly is the establishment of what are called empowerment scholarship accounts. ESAs are essentially vouchers that would divert taxpayer dollars to private and home schools by allowing a 100% tax credit for contributions to organizations that would use the money to fund accounts that parents could use to pay for private school tuition and other expenses. They would cost the state as much as $25 million a year in revenue and divert funding to private schools and homeschooling parents with no requirement that the schools receiving the funds admit all students and no oversight on whether a quality education is actually provided. One of the ESA bills under consideration this year is Senate Bill 612. At a recent hearing on that bill before the Senate Government Reform Committee, MSBA President Jan Meese said the proposal is nothing more than a voucher scheme in disguise.
Embedded in Article 9, Section 1A of the Missouri Constitution is the promise to establish and fund public education. With the passage of Senate Bill 612, that promise is at risk. It will divert funds through tax credits to private, parochial, home schools, or virtual schools that are not accountable to taxpayers.
We urge you to contact your legislators and ask them to oppose empowerment savings accounts and all other voucher proposals that have a potential to divert money away from our public schools. We will keep you updated on legislative developments again this year through our Legislative Voice newsletter sent to members via email each Friday during the session, our Twitter feed with up-to-the-minute developments through critical issue alerts and periodic webinars. The State Board of Education now has only 3 sitting members and is still not able to conduct any official business, following the decision by Governor Greitens to withdraw and then reappoint 5 nominees to the State Board in early January. The State Senate must confirm those nominees before they can resume service on the State Board. Senate President Pro Tem Ron Richard has said confirmation hearings for the 5 will not happen until March, if at all. Senators from both parties have expressed opposition to the governor's nominees to the State Board after they acted to fire Dr. Margie Van Dieven as Commissioner of Education back in December. They were able to serve on the State Board of Education at that time since the governor appointed them when the legislature was not in session. The 2018 Early Childhood Education Program of the Year Award applications are open through April 2nd. Districts submitting applications will be judged on effective practices and innovative solutions in early childhood education, and 3 statewide winners will be announced based on student enrollment. The winning school districts this year will be required to produce a short video on their program that will be shown at this year's MSBA Annual Conference. The Early Childhood Education Program of the Year Award is sponsored by MSBA's foundation, Future Builders. Well, the best thing about the MSBA Annual Conference is you. Get your school team together and submit your presentation for a chance to present at this year's conference. More than 100 presentations by school districts are showcased at the conference and provide valuable information on successful programs. You can submit a proposal for a presentation at the 2018 Annual Conference through the MSBA website. The annual conference this year is scheduled for September 27th through the 30th. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
All right, the next section of our agenda is our academic high target. This evening, we will be hearing from Dr. Greiner.
Good evening, Board. It's my pleasure to be up here tonight. I'm going to be joined by a couple of friends from Francis Howell North. So I'm here tonight to talk about the ways in which Francis Howell is supporting students who take advanced placement courses for the first time. The district has worked hard over the last decade to grow the reach of advanced placement courses in our high schools. We believe firmly that students that access advanced placement classes while in high school increase their chances for success in colleges and careers. There is research out there that suggests that agrees with that assumption. But we know that we can do better in terms of increasing the participation of students who have historically been underrepresented. Specifically, students that are of color and students that are financially disadvantaged. This isn't a trend that's just unique to Francis Howell. This is a trend that is a national phenomenon. So we know that we have talented teachers, we have great ideas, and very proud of the work of our teachers in this district to bring student support for students that take advanced placement courses for the first time. So really that process for us begins with the opportunity for students in the summer to participate in an AP summer boot camp. And that is a 3-day program intended for those who plan to take an AP class for the very first time. The skills that students are focusing on in the boot camp include note-taking, writing skills, and just the ability to cope with highly rigorous coursework. So you can see from the slide, this most recent version of the summer boot camp, we had 53 students from around the district participate. One of them is here with us tonight, Ms. Caitlin. After students experience that summer boot camp course, we invite them to be part of a Foundations of AP course. So this course is actually a class that students take for credit as part of their daily schedule. It's the first time that we're offering this course this year. And again, it takes some of those ideas and skills that students start honing during the summer and continue on during the school year with a focus on relationship building, self-advocacy, personal persistence, and just having the right attitude, the right mindset in order to be successful in an AP environment. Our teachers support students in the actual AP course that they're taking, assisting them with written and communication skills, or oral and written communication skills, as well as the ability to collaborate with their peers as well as other adults. Now there is a national program similar to this course called AVID, and we as a district kicked the tires on that program and found it to be rather pricey. And under our current financial constraints, we did the next best thing and we developed our own program. And Ms. Shelley Parks, who's here tonight, is one of our Foundations of AP course teachers at Howell North, was actually a curriculum writer for us and did a great job pulling together our curriculum. So that curriculum, again, was designed by our advanced placement teachers in our district, designed to support students who are new to AP. We've been able to offer it at each of our high schools this year, and we're able to offer the course for elective credit. So I want to introduce Shelley Parks, who is a teacher at Howell North. She's an AP teacher. She's a Foundations of AP teacher. She's one of the authors of our curriculum. She did have parent-teacher conferences tonight, Matt, but I just asked nicely, I guess. I don't know if she was able to make it. Lori Penwell, who also teaches Foundations of AP at Francis South Central, wasn't able to join us because of an illness. But we're excited to have Shelley and Caitlin here, and I'll let Kelly introduce us to Caitlin. So take it away, Shelley.
Caitlin's going to talk before me, but I wanted to introduce you. This is Caitlin Werner, and she's my student. She is a sophomore at Francis Howell North High School, and this year she's taking 2 AP classes, English 2 pre-AP and AP Euro. So she's going to just talk a little bit about her experience this year.
My experience with AP Foundations has been phenomenal. At first, I was apprehensive about my transition from Hazelwood East High School, but to my surprise, it has been more fluid than expected. AP Foundations has helped me stay focused and organized and help support me in my weakest subjects. One of the exercises we do in class is called tutorials. Tutorials are when you propose a problem to a small group with the same subject difficulties. Everyone works and asks questions to help you reach the answer without directly telling you the answer. During the summer, there was an opportunity to attend a boot camp, which was a 3-day program to help us prepare for our first AP class. Between AP Foundations and the boot camp, we were taught how to properly use Cornell notes. We were also given a routine on how we can separate our workload, what days to work on it, the time to spend on it, and how to study. I truly believe this program should stay available to incoming college-bound sophomores and juniors taking their first AP class to persuade them to take more challenges in high school and give them the support to do so. Next year, I plan to take AP Government and AP Language to continue my plan for taking challenging courses, but now I feel prepared to take these classes on my own, thanks to the support of AP Foundations and Ms. Parks. I do plan to come back to Foundations as a tutor in my junior year.
Okay, so when I think of AP Foundations and the successes, I think of course, kiddos like Caitlin, who are a total rock star. I also think of Addie, who started this year wanting to quit her journalism class, and after having a few conversations with her about how interviewing and having to talk to other people would be helpful for her in her future and push her outside of her comfort zone, which was good. She stuck out journalism, and she also just recently found out that she was accepted to be part of the national award-winning newspaper staff at North next year. I also think of Liz, who's stepping up her game by signing up for not 1 or 2, but 3 AP courses next year. I think of Isaac, who just got his letter of acceptance for National Honor Society, which was a goal he had for himself the beginning of this year when all of us were deciding which extracurricular activity to join. I think of Lacey, who's a struggling learner who wanted to take on the challenge of an AP course, so took on AP Lang this year. And even though this class is definitely a struggle for her, she and I spend time together reading each day, revising her essays, studying for quizzes to make sure she gets it. And though she doesn't feel ready to take the AP Lang test this year, she has already signed up for AP Lit next year, and the goal is to take the test at the end of next year for her. A day in AP Foundations looks different for all students. Some days we're working on geometry, a lot of days. Some days we're working on AP Euro, which is also frequent. Some days I'm teaching them how to take notes. We're doing reading, writing strategies. Some days we're just sharing celebrations and struggles. This class, even for me, has pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and for the kids too, but it has been so rewarding. So I really thank you guys for seeing the need for this program. Also, my colleague at FHC, who's sick, asked me to read the following. She says she's extremely passionate about this course. She echoes my sentiments and could share individual success stories about each of her students as well. Clearly, the impact of this course upon our students is tremendous. With the aid of this course, students garner more than just help with their AP courses. They gain motivation to push themselves beyond what they thought they were capable of, confidence in their evolving and improving abilities, and perseverance through minor setbacks or failures. Many of these students are taking even more challenging classes next year thanks to Foundations, and that's at Francis House Central. Thank you.
That's okay. Yes, you as well, please. So first of all, Caitlin, thank you so much for sharing your individual story. I think that really helps us as a board understand from the student perspective. So thank you very much for being here with us tonight. You mentioned that you attended the AP boot camp and the foundation course. How did you find out about the AP course availability for the boot camp and the foundations course?
Actually, they emailed me asking me to take AP European History, and at first, I was kind of scared to do it, but, I ended up just deciding to do it. And AP Foundations, it was, recommended to me to take it to help me with my first AP class and, writing and all of that, so that's how I kind of found.
Do you feel that the foundations course helped you be more prepared for the AP course itself, the Euro?
Yes. It's, we learn how to do Cornell notes, which helps us understand the material better. So with whatever we learn and we're taking down notes as he's talking, it kind of helps us to take Cornell notes down so we can understand it better. So, and she just taught us how to organize everything so we won't be all over the place when we're learning stuff.
Great, Thank you. Mrs. Parks, so you helped develop the curriculum?
I did.
So being the first year and getting through it, it sounds like the curriculum is very flexible based on the student needs in the class. How do you feel about the general structure? Are you happy with where it is?
Yeah, I think we're just now kind of getting into a groove with the structure and figuring out what works. We do tutorials, like Caitlin had talked about, once a week. So the kids bring a point of confusion from a class that they're having. And then as a group, they get divided and they all help each other by just asking questions. And they have to, okay, have you looked at your notes? Have you figured this out? And so helping each other. So we do that once a week. There's definitely times where we have to pause because everybody has a Euro test or everybody has whatever. So yeah, but I mean, it's definitely flexible, which pushes me outside of my comfort zone. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, we're getting it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Lane?
Yes. Excuse me, Shelley. Are 8th grade students like my new colleague, Jesus, encouraged to take the boot camp in summer?
That might be a Dr. Greiner question, because I'm not sure. I know sophomores for sure.
Yeah, so typically most of our first-time AP students are sophomores. We don't usually have freshmen taking AP courses, so the students that are identified to be invited to the AP summer boot camp are usually incoming sophomores and juniors that are then planning to take an AP course that next school year. So it flows right into the school year. Boot camp, foundations, while they're taking the course.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions?
Mrs. Cope, I'd just like to thank Dr. Greiner and, of course, Mrs. Parks and Mrs. Pennell for their great work. And Caitlin, again, thank you for sharing your story. I would just echo, to close us out, what Dr. Greiner said at the beginning, which is that we know that taking an AP course, irrespective of how well you do or whether you get a 3 on the test or not, is a better predictor of success in college than any other measure. And so our schools have been so involved in helping our kids get into the groove of taking AP classes because it matches so closely with what we're going to talk about in a little bit, our strategic plan, which is to get our kids prepared for college or career. So it's a perfect fit with the work that we're doing, and we're just so excited about programs like the Foundations course to help all of our kids feel that they too can be successful in a challenging class. It's an important life lesson as well as a preparation for them. So thank you very much for your work.
And what I will add to that is as the high school principals work to grow their AP program, that's when we saw that we needed that need for that parallel support, because not only are the students that are in Foundations first-time AP students, but they're also students maybe who have never taken a pre-AP class or a challenge class, but yet we know that they have a potential to be successful. And so what we know is that if we provide that parallel support with that first experience, that they then can, like Caitlin said, next year take the AP course again on our own without that parallel support. So we just want to make sure that we help provide the students with the necessary supports to be successful and have that guiding adult along the way, and we know that they can do it, and then we're excited that those students then continue on that journey on their own.
Great, thank you. Great presentation, thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is the Seal of Biliteracy. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Seal of Biliteracy resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lane, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Dr. Greiner, you're up again.
So board, thank you for reviewing the information around the Seal of Biliteracy. We're excited to offer this opportunity for our students to receive an additional recognition at graduation regarding their proficiency in multiple languages. Be happy to entertain any questions that you guys may have about the Seal, but it's a new program offered through DESE this year. We're one of many districts that are bringing it online for this year. You may have seen an article in the paper this week of Webster Groves following a similar process. So we're excited about the opportunity. Our world language teachers are very excited to bring this chance to our students in world language. Also our English language learners who have that expertise of a language at home would be able to earn a seal as well. So it's not just for students taking world language classes in our district, but it's also those English language learners that have a target language that they're speaking at home, that they can also earn the seal as well. So I'm happy to entertain any questions that the board may have.
Great, thank you, Dr. Greiner. Board, hopefully you had an opportunity to review the actual resolution. Do you have any questions for Dr. Greiner on the program? Okay, thank you very much. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Board, next on our agenda is financials. I will entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. Any discussion? By roll call.
Ms. Ferguson?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the January 2018 financial statements as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mrs. Walker. Board, any comments or questions? Okay, by roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 7-0. All right, next on our agenda is strategic planning. As you recall, we did a work session at our last meeting to go over the tremendous amount of work that went into our new strategic plan. So I will entertain a motion to approve the strategic plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mr. Lane. Any discussion? All right, by roll call.
Mr. Hain?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. It's very exciting. We have a new strategic plan. Board, next on our agenda is the policies. Hopefully you have read, it's up for first reading right now. There are numerous policies there. So please make sure you have an opportunity to take a look at those. All right, Jesus, we're getting ready to transition into work session. So what that means is we as a board are going to come down to these seats and have a good conversation about a topic. You are welcome to join us if you would like. You are also available to head out if you don't want to sit for that conversation. Tonight we're going to be talking about a work site clinic. So it's about healthcare and our employees and how we may be able to fit a work site clinic in to help our employees' healthcare. So again, you're welcome to join us, but if you're going to go ahead and leave this evening, we certainly have appreciated having you here with us tonight. Did you have anything you wanted to say this evening?
Nothing much, but
Push the button. There you go.
Nothing, but I really enjoyed coming here today.
Good, thank you. We've enjoyed having you as well. So we wish you much success. Which high school will you be heading to?
Francis Howell Central.
Woohoo, okay. Well, take a look at those AP courses. When you get out there, they have this great foundations course that they started this year, that I hope you find interesting. Thanks for joining us this evening. Board, we'll take a 5-minute recess and we will move down to our work session.
you don't mind.
The Kevin show.
No.
I can split it.
I was just gonna say, don't pick it up like that.
Very nice.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Your high school career.
Breathe it on me. Oh, no, you're that bad. Take good care of me.
Can you want me somewhere specific? I can use that one.
Maybe you're gonna sit next to you.
Mine?
Mike can sit next to you. It's fine. You don't have to pull that one.
We'll share.
They can share the handheld.
I want to make him do all the talking.
This one would never come anywhere. You guys don't like really bad.
No, my teacher, when it had Francis Howell.
Just remove this forward, and it wants you to sit something more.
I won't.
2 weeks I'm on this. 2 weeks.
2?
Yeah. Chad, you don't can't. You can sit right there. I think, is that Sandy? Yes. I'm not sure. This is on. Whoever sits in me have to talk right into it. This one you come on, Michelle, go for it.
Is Mike having work here?
Don't let Chad talk to me.
What's that?
Mary is in here.
Yeah.
Half away from others.
You're not going to tuck into it.
Yeah,
Because Renee, right now we have Chad, you and Mary, Sandy and Patrick. Is that Sandy?
Are you still doing the assessor?
Chad is there next to Michelle.
Yeah.
I know that. This is Sandy. Yes, this is Sandy. Huh? It's her, older.
I saw my mom.
She's down there.
I couldn't see that very The people that watch their career on it.
Your microphone is on. You're on mute. You have to talk right into it. Or she'll lean into it.
I'm imagining for the bad handle.
Or you can pass it to Heather.
What did I do last time?
You weren't turning it on, and you turned it on, and you turned it off.
Okay.
And then
Right, and then you're back there saying turn it on, and I'm like, turn it on, and
Yes,
you're yelling at me.
yes.
Give me my talker.
It was a vicious cycle. No, I already ate the gold time.
She burns my battery every day. Oh, we're gonna do this. Oh, no. Have we done that? Have we done this? Have we done that?
Yeah, that's okay. I text her and think I'm texting the other Mary, my boss Mary. And I'm like, yeah, it was about you.
She texted me that Jen got information on Francis Howell North. So I wrote Jen Henry. And Jen Henry goes, I don't know anything from Francis Howell North. So it's,
I didn't text you on email, and I got done at the same time.
oh, shut up.
All right, board, are we ready? Literally, that's not on. And then Jen Henry was like, no, I don't have anything. I was like, and then he sends it again. I get off. Get off.
I said, Jen, let me know.
All right, board, are we ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Let's go.
How's it going?
All right, good evening.
Different group.
We were doing the reflection right there. Good. Board, are we ready? So next on our agenda is the work site clinic. Mr. Supple.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. So this evening, I want to, first of all, help set the stage a little bit because it's hard to imagine. I know time flies for all of us, but we had this conversation first in August of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah. And so not everybody who is seated around the table today was here for that, so we're going to give a little bit of a background. I'll try not to draw it out too long, but I do want to provide some background for people who may not have heard it. But I want to first start by talking about something that's very topical. So if you look at the photos up here, titans of industry here, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos with Amazon, and Jamie Dimon with JP Morgan Chase. In the news this week because these three companies, Berkshire Hathaway along with the other two, are going to form their own healthcare company because they see the advantage to helping it contain some of the rising costs. And just a couple of quotes from the article that talked about that. And I think this is really important and something for us to remember as we get into this. Mr. Bezos says, hard as it might be, reducing healthcare's burden on the economy while improving outcomes for employees and their families would be worth the effort. And we certainly agree with that. I think our worksite clinic is an opportunity for us to do the same here on a little bit different scale. And Mr. Buffett said, our group doesn't come to this problem with answers, but we also don't accept the outcome as inevitable. And I think that sums up what we're trying to do. We believe worksite clinics are a great way for us to bend the cost curve a little bit, provide better care for our employees. We know it'll be a little bit of a learning curve as we go through, but we'll be a good company kind of struggling through that as we go. I did provide a couple of slides here just as interest. We belong to the Business Health Coalition, and they recently completed work on their strategic plan. And just a couple of outtakes from that, just that healthcare is concerned for all the groups. Something that we will probably tie into this, physician burnout is really becoming a problem, and we know that primary care is really important in order to help control our costs. So the worksite clinic gives us an opportunity to let physicians practice medicine the way they always wanted to, and hopefully we'll deliver better primary care as a result of that. So really, the goal of the worksite clinic is to deal with the three aspects of healthcare: price, quality, and the patient experience. And we hope by providing a quality experience for our patients, we will be able to drive greater numbers to the clinic, which will help us on the price side of things. So what are the goals? We want greater employee engagement. We want to make worksite wellness part of what we do. So we have some wellness efforts underway already, but we think we'll be able to bolster those under some provisions of the services available through the clinic provider. We want better care coordination. We know that sometimes people avoid care because it's too cumbersome to get an appointment to get in to see the doctor, and so they choose, like, you know, if I could get in next week, I'd go, but if I have to wait 3 weeks, I'll forget about it. I get busy with other things, and they don't go, and that leads to some issues, particularly for people who are dealing with chronic disease, and so we want to break down some of those barriers. We also want to increase access and the convenience of the health care for our employees, hopefully lower our costs a little bit. We think it'll be a way to attract and retain people, because this will be seen as a great benefit for our groups. We want to maybe manage some worksite illnesses. There's an opportunity to shift how we handle workers' compensation. And then hopefully we'll be able to avoid some of those unnecessary services that may be done when you get into a traditional physician practice. I think this slide is very important. Just a reminder to us that 20% of the population is responsible for 80% of the cost. Often those disease states in there are the chronic diseases. You can see the size of the arrow that's associated with chronic disease. We know from our own data that diabetes is a major cost driver for Francis Howell, And some of that is as a result of people not being compliant with their treatment protocol. We hope that the clinic will give them an opportunity to establish a better relationship with the physician, get in and make sure that their meds are working as promised, and also get some of the health coaching to go along with that to help them feel better about being compliant. Clinics are becoming much more prevalent, so you can see it affects employee sizes. So, you know, some groups have 25,000 plan members. We have about a little over 4,000 plan members, so we're part of a smaller piece of that puzzle. But groups of all sizes are approaching worksite clinics, and all industries as well. So while it's a somewhat new concept for education, you can see that there is a segment of that has been out there for a while. And while it's certainly not a new concept, I think it's gaining some traction just as we continue to struggle with the rising costs of healthcare and some of the other issues associated with care, as I talked about. So there are three different models. On-site would mean that there's a facility on the premises of one of our school sites. There's also near site, so it's not on our premises, but would be somewhat close by. Those first two would both be dedicated specifically to a single entity like Francis Howell. And then finally there's shared, which is a concept that we're working towards because we partnered with Parkway and Pattonville in this effort. So there will be several clinic sites available, and we'll be able to move between them depending upon whether it's closer to where we live or where we work. So we think that'll improve the convenience factor and help people be more ready to adopt services through our clinic model. So we want to make sure that we address the things that are most important to people. We've decided that we're going to serve our employees and their dependents. That was something that we had to decide somewhat early on because it was important as people were evaluating what the cost of the clinic services might be, that they knew who our population is going to be. And of course, our retirees are part of our plan members. They would be invited to participate as well. And then on the staffing side, whether you want to have an MD or a nurse practitioner or some combination thereof, we have decided to focus on an MD model, and I'll share some information about that as we move through. Certainly the hours of operation are important. One of the reasons that we're moving this direction is because we want to be able to adapt the hours to better meet the work schedules of our employees. So if you have a job and children, you might be perplexed about how I'm going to get the kids to the doctor because the last appointment is 3 o'clock and I don't get off work until 4. So how am I going to do that? So we hope that the flexibility in the hours will be something that will also be attractive to our people. And then the facility design, the plan design, just making sure that it works within what we have. These are the services that could be treated at the clinic. You can see in the column that's labeled additional services. Those are some things that we will pursue as we become a little bit more mature within our program. But it certainly allows us to address many of the things that you think of when you would go to the physician. But really focusing on that, kind of in the middle of preventive services, that disease management will be a critical component for the work that we do to try to help our people who are coping with a chronic condition to better manage their conditions. This just is a way to paint how we might achieve savings as a result of this. And so this is based on an actual case study by Quick Trip. And as it turns out, Quick Trip is partnered with one of the 2 finalists that we're actually considering. The company is called Care ATC, who provides their clinic services. They have a couple of locations here in the St. Louis area. We've had a chance to tour them. And so just to show you that for Quick Trip, the average cost of a visit prior to their clinic model was $185. And through the clinic model, they were able to get that down to $126. So you're saving about $60 on every visit. And so when you think about 4,000 plan members and the number of times that people might go in to see the physician, those numbers can add up fairly quickly. And so on an average basis, they found that they were saving about $1 million a year once they got into providing those clinic services. And so there are other ways that the clinic helps to drive savings, but just lowering the overall cost, the overhead associated with some of those major hospital-based physician practices helps to drive down the cost of care without really affecting the quality of service that anybody receives. And I thought this was very interesting. Nashville Public Schools has been involved with the clinic for some time. And while they've generated some savings, you can see there's almost $3 million, they did find that teachers feeling better and being healthier kept them in school, which meant they were in front of their students more. And we know that the teacher is the single greatest factor that impacts student academic achievement. And so it really not only had the benefit of saving money, but really led to better academic outcomes for them because the regular classroom teacher was in front of their kids more frequently. Return on investment is going to be an important concept as we go through the discussions about the clinic. And so there are some factors that really can influence the return that you might see. So the cost of services in a particular geographic area is going to have a big impact. St. Louis, because we have 2 teaching hospitals, we tend to have a relatively high cost of care. Again, I think it's the embedded costs associated with hospital-based physician practices. There's a lot of overhead associated with that, and it's been used as a profit center for some of the hospitals. And so the cost of care is important. The utilization of the center is critical. We did a lot of reference calls as we were trying to narrow down our selection of providers. And one of the things that people said is you really need to get people into clinics. The volume is important to really realize the savings that you're looking for. One of the things that was encouraging to us is that pretty much universally as we have those reference discussions, people said you can expect to see a pretty high volume because if you're doing it right, people love the service and you won't have any trouble getting the volume that you need to make this a viable option. And then just making sure that you've chosen the right staffing model, that the levels of care that you're providing are appropriate. And we've had a lot of conversation with our 2 finalists around the issue of referrals. So one of the problems that exists within care as we typically receive it today is that I go to see my primary care physician and I need them to see a specialist for some reason or another. Well, I'm not well versed in everybody who provides whatever specialty area it might be. So my physician makes a recommendation to me and that's who I go see. That's a fairly common outcome. Those recommendations are often done without any discussion of whether or not that physician, that specialist, has better outcomes than other physicians who provide the same services, or whether the fees that they're charging are higher or lower than what the standard market rate is. So we typically just go as our physician has referred us, and then we're at the mercy of who's ever there. And I'm not saying that the care is bad. Through the Business Health Coalition, we have done some research, and there are wide variations in terms of the efficacy, particularly as it relates to hospitalizations after treatment, so readmissions after treatment is one of the statistics that's tracked by Center for Medicaid Services, and so we've been able to collect that data and look at that, and there are different outcomes for different physicians. So if I was going to go to a specialist for a procedure that required hospitalization, I would like to know ahead of time what the likelihood is that I'd be readmitted if I was treated by that physician. And so we hope that we'll work very closely with our clinic provider, the physicians who are working in our clinics, to make sure that we are having them look at those quality metrics so that the referrals are based on making sure that our plan members receive the best care possible in the best manner possible. That doesn't always happen. Of course, the fees charged by the clinic provider would be an important part. And then whether or not you're replacing any existing services. So this happens to mention biometric screening, but a number of the school districts we talked to said that there are some other aspects of things that they were already doing that might serve as a cost driver or a savings driver, so to speak. And you may already be doing that, and so you have to be careful not to count something twice. And then we've talked, I've mentioned before about managing chronic conditions, very important. And then just making sure that we are engaging with people as we get access to their data, and that we're using evidence-based standards of care. Just talking, again, this repeats some of the things that we've talked about, but these are some of the factors that we think are critical to success and what we'll be looking at and have looked at as we've talked about narrowing down who our finalists are. So we want to make sure that we have clinicians who are excited about the opportunity to practice medicine this way. The visits that we've had within the St. Louis area, all of the practitioners are just so happy, and the refrain that we heard quite often when we went to one of these visits was, I am never going back to the way that it was. I just love practicing medicine this way. This is what I went to medical school for. So we hope to find similar physicians and medical assistants to work in our clinics as well. So when we began this process, one of the first steps for us was to conduct a feasibility study. So before we got into the big business of going through all the ups and downs and hoops we had to jump through, we wanted to make sure that there was going to be interest on the part of our plan members. And so the board might remember that we did hire a firm to help us with the feasibility study. These are some of the things that they took a look at as we went through that process. And so the methodology was, first of all, we took a look at our specific claims. So they didn't just base this on standard data or national data. This was based on our claims and what we wanted to have offered within our clinics. And then they made put together some scenarios based on that. And they assumed that we would have 25% participation in the first year, that we would increase about 5% each year, to close to 50% participation over time. And then the model suggested that based on those parameters, we would probably break even by the third year, and that we, depending upon the size of the initial investment, which might involve whether or not we would have certain pieces of expensive equipment available, like x-rays or MRIs, something like that, it might take longer to recover the initial investment. I think this is really important to remember. So when we surveyed people for both we would survey both our active employees and our retirees. So 85 to 89% of the people said, yes, we would be willing to use the clinic. So we're very encouraged by that. The most frequent response was that people would drive about 5 to 10 miles to get to the clinic, which is reasonable. And so we shared that information with the providers, and they were able to do heat mapping to help us better determine how we would locate the sites. There was some concern expressed about privacy of the data, and so that was a cue to us. That'll be some of the communication plan that we need to develop as we roll this out. But again, only about 20% of the people expressed that concern, so there's a preponderance of people who didn't have any concerns there. And then a lot of people indicated that they currently take a sick day to see the doctor either for themselves or for a dependent. So one of the advantages is, depending upon how close you are to the clinic site, so take, for example, one of our teachers, they might be able to go on their plan time. I'm going to go on my plan time, I know I can get there, there's no waiting in a waiting room. I get in, I spend my 20 minutes or so with the physician, and I'm able to get back at school. Now I'm still in front of my kids. I had my blood draw or whatever needed to be done to help manage my condition.
I'm back in front of my kids, no disruption to the school day. Lisa Simpkins doesn't have to worry about finding a sub for me. So those are some of the soft costs that might come as a result of that. So a large percentage of our people have to take a sick day in order to see the doctor, either for themselves or for the kids. So that might be a real advantage to us as we move forward. So we want to make sure we have success as we move forward. So we know a lot of people in are enrolled in our high deductible plan, and so we want to be sensitive to that because it does have an impact on the overall outcome. We know that there are some savings that they didn't capture in their modeling for us. So the whole idea of substitute absences and so forth was not something that they factored into their return on investment. And then they didn't really take a look at the cost differential between what we're paying now for drug screening and what might happen through the clinic. But we know from working with our vendors that there's an opportunity to significantly reduce lab costs, which are pretty much a standard part of some of our business. So again, another way to save money. Ways that we can increase our return on investment. So partnering with other people, we're already going to do that. So that's great. We need to find, as a result of the way the law is written, our members who are in the high deductible plan will have to have a copay to visit the clinic. Our other plan members wouldn't pay a copay. We want to break down any barriers to getting in to see a physician, but law requires us to charge a reasonable fee, and so we'll keep it very, very low. So the good news for our high deductible plan members is that at least at the initial part of the plan here, when they go to see the doctor, it's first dollar right out of their pocket until they meet their deductible. And so given that example earlier of, average office visit being about $190, that would be $190 that they're paying. Now they'll pay about $25. So even though there's some copay for them, it'll be much less than what they're currently paying. And so I think it'll help them stretch their healthcare dollars a lot further. We have to be careful about our marketing, addressing the issues of concern that were raised to us during the survey that we did. We want to make sure that we get the best fees, and I'll talk a little bit about the process that we use. We want to make sure that we're promoting what's available through the clinic so that people are taking advantage of it and don't think about going just because they're ill, but maybe because they want to learn about how to take better care of themselves and to take advantage of some of the health services that are available there. How can we integrate it with other things that we have going on? As I said, we already have an employee wellness program. We're looking to incorporate the wellness services available through the clinic, and both of the models that we're looking at will involve a health coach as part of that program. And so how can that health coach not only work with people who come to the clinic, but work with us on a broader scale to beef up the wellness efforts that are available for our employees generally? And then what other additional services might be woven in over time in order to make sure that we provide the highest level of care possible. So this just shows the differences between a on-site or dedicated to single employee, single employer, or a multi-employer. So we've already decided that it makes the most sense based on our survey results, and Parkway had the same indication when they did their feasibility study, that sharing clinic sites would be best because of and it really has to do with the distributed nature of our populations. So there are a lot of Parkway teachers who live in Francis Howell. And so by having a clinic in Francis Howell, it's closer to where they live, they're more likely to take advantage of that. And similarly, I joke a little bit, but I was very excited when one of the providers showed us their heat map, and I looked at it and I said, oh, that's great, because that clinic in West County, that's like right where I live, and it's sweet. So I think by having that shared model, and instead of us just having one clinic available to us, there'll be at least 3, it does broaden the base and helps with the adoption of the clinic as a primary care deliverer, which will help with our savings. And so these were the models that were created by Mercer when they did the study for us. And we focused on scenario B, which is a moderate uptake on utilization. And it showed there that we would be able to show over 5 years a positive return on our investment. And so we're very encouraged by that. This was at the very outset before we got into discussions about providers or anything along those lines. And again, just some kind of plays it out year by year, where you can see how we're moving with the program. So now I'll talk a little bit about, so that's a background of how we got to where we are today. If the board has any questions before I get to the next section, I'll be happy to answer those. All right, so we worked with our insurance consultant, J.W. Terrell, and they marketed, we actually sent the RFP out to 13 different partners, and we received responses from 9 of them. We decided by working collaboratively that of the 9, there were 5 that we were interested in speaking to in depth. And so over a period of 2 days, we had some 2-hour interviews with each of those 5 companies. I had a chance to hear their information, but we also had a chance, we took at least half of that time for our own questions, so that we could probe a little bit deeper on the things that were important to us. After we finished interviewing the 5, we talked among ourselves, and we eventually narrowed it down to 2 finalists, which is CARE ATC, and I shared with you previously that they already have a partnership in the greater St. Louis area with Quick Trip. They're looking to expand their footprint here rather substantially, and so there could be some great advantages to us in that regard. And then the other provider is CARE Here, and the school district of the city of St. Charles has been operating their worksite clinic for about 2 years now, and their partner is CARE Here. So we're able to visit their site and talk to them about their experience. We really looked at the things that we felt were most important. What are the scope of services that you're going to offer? What's your recommended staffing model, and what's your approach to managed care? How do you think we ought to be dealing with our population? How does the operations work? So what are the ins and outs, nuts and bolts of how this thing all goes together? What reporting is available to us, which is a critical factor we found in terms of being able to effectively manage the program. If you can get the right information back, you're going to be able to better direct changes to make it as efficient as possible. What's your experience been? What kind of liabilities might be out there? And then, of course, last on the list is pricing, which is important as we consider that. And then we conducted some site visits during January and February. The group, and we did invite from Francis Howell, we did invite representatives from both our Teachers Association and our Support Staff Association to participate both in the interviews and on the visits as well. And so they had a chance to see both a CARE ATC clinic site and the CARE Here clinic site. And then just recently, I think just this week, our Employee Insurance Committee had an opportunity to tour the CARE ATC site that is in St. Peter's. We had a lot of conversation about what type of service delivery we would use. When we began our conversation, I would tell you that the 3 school districts believed that a nurse practitioner was going to be the model that we would choose because it was going to be less costly than a physician model. But as we conducted our reference calls with people who've been doing this for a while, they said that the importance of people being able to walk away from a visit with the medication that they need to take care of their condition is really a plus, plus, plus. And so in the state of Missouri, a nurse practitioner can prescribe but cannot dispense medication. An MD, of course, can dispense medication. And so a lot of the discussion centered around the importance of doing that. And so we're not talking about every medication, you know, it's not going to be like Walgreens, but there is a list of 60 or so generic medications that are most commonly used that will be available at no cost to the employee when they leave the clinic. And so I go in, and whatever it is I need, whether it's a Z-Pack or something else like that, I walk away with it. I don't have to go to the pharmacy, and there's no paperwork for me to fill out, no deductible I have to pay, no copay, none of that at the pharmacy. And so we really think it'll be great. And there will be some cost to the plan because those drugs aren't free, but the greater adherence to your treatment protocol is going to improve our overall health outcomes, and I think it's really going to be beneficial. So based on all those conversations and having listened to the references as we talk to other people, we've honed in now on a physician model, an MD model, and so we would have an MD at each site who would be available, and we think it's really going to help with improving the outcomes. And then we took, we'll also take a look at what other services might we be able to expand as we get there. For other districts, occupational health was a consideration. They have bus drivers and food service employees who are their own employees. And so like for bus drivers, they need to have an annual physical, so the ability to do that through the clinic was something that would be important to them. And then there would be opportunities like offering vision or dental services at some point in the future. Some more robust clinics have done that. So we use a kind of a moderate assumption, but we tweaked that a little bit from the feasibility study. So based on what we heard from multiple companies who are using clinic models under both CARE ATC, CARE Here, and also Marathon, which was another provider that we were looking at the time as when we did our reference checks, we felt that we could probably count on a little bit more than 25% the utilization in that first year, and of course that is going to take have a big impact on what the cost, the return on investment is. And so I know that this is very hard to read on the screen, but the board members have it available to them on board docs. And as we look at this, so we're somewhat focused now. Hopefully I won't shut this off. I think this is my plan. We're focused now on CARE ATC using the MD model. And so if you take a look at Francis Howell, we have we will incur somewhere around $990,000 of costs in the first year, but we'll have some direct benefits. We'll get half of that back right away, just in terms of hard cost savings, the differential between office visits and labs and things like that. And we were somewhat critical about the types of soft costs that would be involved in our return on investment. So we think we've come down to something that is reasonable for us to assume that there will be some soft cost savings. And so in the first year, it is possible for us to save about $63,000. So we're not going to save a lot of money the first year, but we think that there's great potential there. And of course, as we get out to the third year, taking a look at higher adoption rates as we go along, somewhere around $800,000 a year. And while the savings, again, are important, I think that the overall outcome is that we're going to have a population that's being better served. They're going to get better health care, and hopefully, the savings that will be attributable to working through the clinic will be magnified by the avoidance of care for conditions that were treated at an early stage rather than leading up to hospitalization or specialists or some other type of and so very excited about sharing with you that we think there's really a positive return. I do want to take a moment and talk a little bit about CARE Here. One of the reasons that the CARE Here numbers are a little bit different, and you can see that there are within the first year, there's still about $424,000 of cost to us, not offset by savings, and that declines over time. And the CARE Here model is really based on a capitation or a cost per plan member. So we pay a cost whether you go see the doctor or not. And so that's a large embedded cost in the model that they use, the way that they structure their program. And while we're hopeful that we can get a high utilization, we're probably never going to get to 100%, but we're going to pay for 100%. So it makes the threshold a little bit higher to clear in terms of reaching cost savings. So we're very lucky to have a great partner in our insurance consultant, J.W. Terrell, and Chris Johnson is their actuary who has gone over these numbers. But I also feel great about this because Ron Orr, my colleague from Pattonville, is also a numbers guru. He studied them as well, and he concurs that these are a fair representation of where we might be, and it really is the high bar to clear with the Care Here model, where we pay for everybody, whether you see use the clinic or not, that led us to be more favorably disposed towards Care ATC.
Kevin?
Yes.
A quick question for you. On the, it looks like Parkway is recouping a large percentage of their investment. Is that due to the fact that their insurance is structured differently? Do they have multiple plans? Do they have less plans, or are their plans structured differently so they're able to recoup more? How does it work?
I think the driver there, Mike, is that Care ATC already has a site in Parkway. And so some of those fixed costs don't have to be attributed to that model. They have a larger population than us also, and so some of those factors that drive that, it may be influenced a little bit as well by the number of lives that they cover. And so our next steps, we're in the process now of finalizing. We had a conference call earlier this week. We sent out a series of questions for both Care ATC and Care Here, follow-up questions probing a little bit more deeply, asking them to give us the best of the best, if you will, some of the things that we saw in other people's proposals, so that we could find out what would be available. And so I think we now have all of the answers that we need. Maybe a couple follow-up things that we're going to finalize, and then we'll begin to really get into discussions about contract details. The insurance committee within the Francis Howell School District has been involved in these conversations along the way. We've been keeping them updated, and so we'll certainly provide some information to them as we go through. And then our goal is to bring to you a recommendation at the next meeting so that we can begin to finalize those contracts and start our implementation in April. Of course, there's a lot of pieces that have to be worked out. We have to pick out what location, you know, where the geography of it is, and begin to have the interviews with providers or practitioners, find out who those docs are who might be able to work for us and solve some of those other things. But we believe it's entirely possible that on or about September 1st, this would be up and running. So just as our teachers and support staff members come back for the new school year, we ought to have something new to share with them. With that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Mrs. Ferguson?
Yeah, Kevin, is there a way that, you know, when we're getting all these costs and different things, is there a way that we can track, like, the cost savings when it comes to absenteeism among teachers? How would we be able to track something like that to see our numbers different?
We've had a lot of conversation about that, Mrs. Ferguson. I think it'd be a little bit difficult, and the reason is this, that we certainly have data about the number of absences in a particular year and the number of absences the next year. Something that I used, actually, was on a panel today speaking about wellness programs for the American Heart Association. And I said, part of the problem that we face is that there are other factors that influence those outcomes that we don't have any control over. So as it turns out, this year we had a higher prevalence of flu. And the vaccine wasn't as effective as people thought it was going to be, which has had an impact on our numbers. And despite our best efforts to provide our employees with flu shots, we're having a greater incidence of flu this year than we did previously. So we haven't done anything wrong or different, but our numbers are different, and it's something that we don't necessarily have direct control over. So we might have some anecdotal evidence about improved outcomes. I think the best we might be able to do would be to have, again, probably more on an anecdotal basis than any other, some information about I was able to go on my planned time and I got right back to school and I didn't have to take a half of a sick day or a full sick day. But again, I don't know that we'll be able to track that exactly, but I do think that it will eventually have a positive influence for us, but I don't know that we'll have hard data to share about it.
Is there any way that you could do like a survey in that? Because I know as a mother, one of the first things, especially when my kids were little, was I didn't care about this and this, but I cared about the health care. Do I have good health care? Are my kids being able to be seen? Do I feel comfortable leaving them and going to work? Is there some type of like a survey we can do at the end of the year to see how that is improved? Because that's their health too.
Each of the providers has a methodology to survey people right at the end of their visit to get feedback about what they felt about it. And the physicians, practitioners are actually evaluated based on, in part, on those survey results. And so yes, that we will have some data around employee engagement and satisfaction with the model, and that'll be available on a continuing basis, and we'll be able to adjust as necessary if we would, if we would happen to see something negative, we could certainly adjust for it. I will tell you that St. Charles has been doing this for 2 years, and my colleague there, Charles Brazil, as well as the representatives from Care Here, say that employee satisfaction is almost 100%. In fact, and we heard similar data from the reference calls that we made. The one company did say that they were beginning to get some negative feedback, but it was because there was such a high demand that it was more difficult now to get an appointment. So it was not about the quality of care, but as demand grew, as utilization grew, the choice appointments were a little bit harder to get. So that's maybe a good problem.
Mr. Lane?
I'm still a big fan of this, but are the 3 districts equal partners financially, or is it kind of like the stuff we do where there's a fiscal responsible party district?
We will be separate entities financially. So Francis Howell will be responsible for the Francis Howell staff members plan members who utilize the plan. So we'll be billed only for those through our medical plan, only for those services that are provided to our plan members. And the proportion, you can see that there are, Parkway has more lives than we do, and of course Pattonville has fewer lives. And so some of the costs associated with the program are proportional based on the number of lives that they're serving. But we're only responsible, we don't take all of those lives and add them together and all of the costs associated with serving them and then divide them out either equally or proportionally. So if Francis Howell were to have 80% participation and Parkway were to have 40% participation, our cost would be double Parkway's because our participation was double. But we only pay for services delivered to our plan members.
Okay, I was just curious because like if, say, Parkway pulled out, then our cost would stay the same basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Supple, I have a couple questions. Today, as part of our wellness program, I believe we do provide flu shots. Is that something that's going to, you had talked about some of the wellness programs rolling into this programs. Would it continue to provide services such as flu shots?
It certainly would be available. We haven't figured that out completely yet because I don't know what the pricing would be. I will tell you that we get, I think we get pretty favorable pricing on the serum, and our nurses, our own school nurses, deliver the flu shots, and they do it at our school sites, which is tremendously convenient for our employees.
Absolutely, we don't want to make it harder.
I'm not sure that I want to disrupt that, but if it would turn out that the serum was available at substantially lower rate, that might be something that we would look at. And those things, that would be passed on to us as a direct pass-through cost. So if it's, make up a number, if it's $5 a dose and they can get it for $2 a dose, we would only pay $2 a dose for the serum. And if we chose to deliver it through the clinic, we certainly could do that. Or if we chose to do it through the current model, we could continue to do that.
Obviously, we have a high proportion of women in our employ. Is there consideration on women's wellness as part of the program? I didn't see that listed specifically, so I didn't know if it was discussed.
Erin, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Mrs. Murray's is our benefits manager, and so.
Hi. So we met with the doctor at CARE ATC in St. Peter's, and she actually is a DO, which she can also do women's wellness. So their mobile app, you can actually choose which doctor you want to go to. So we would like to hire a physician that can provide that service as well. But if that one can't, the one we have can't, they can always go to that other location that's also in our area. And also, you had mentioned the wellness services. This also gives us an opportunity for our Real Appeal program, which is a phenomenal weight loss program that we offer. Or actually, it's a lifestyle management program. Our maternity management program, our employee assistance program. Our physician at the clinic can be promoting those to our employees and really get up utilization, and that's also going to be driving our costs down. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And one of the, with us partnering with 3 other school districts, is the current vision to have one clinic in each district? Has that been thought about or decided yet?
Yes, the vision would be to have one in each district, and the geography will depend a little bit upon the heat maps based on, we again, within the feasibility study, we know that people are comfortable driving between 5 and 10 miles. And when we add in people who, indicated less than 5 miles, it gets to be a pretty high percentage of people. So you would really want to try to get as close as you can to get the most bodies within a 5 or 10 mile radius from where your site is located. And they have some very sophisticated software to help us make those decisions. But yes, we would geographically, a location that would serve the primary district, a location that would serve the Francis Howell School District, and a location that would serve the Pattonville School District. And of course, we would be able to trade, we would be able to go to any of those. And then under the CARE ATC model, we would also have the option to go to any of the other CARE ATC clinics that might be available.
Which means then if we chose that provider, the location in the Francis Howell School District would be open then to their other partners?
Yes, and so that's one of the follow-up questions that we have that we want to get clarification on. My understanding is that we will have a great deal of control over the clinic that is dedicated for our use, and we want to make sure that the majority of those appointments are available for our plan members. And while it's certainly possible, and just as I would expect that we would take second seat to Quick Trip employees if we decided to go to one of the clinics that was dedicated for Quick Trip.
And then these facilities would not be open to the general public, then it would only be for the partnerships?
Only for people who are working with CARE ATC for a clinic model, yes.
Okay. You had mentioned the 100% pay for care here. What were some of the drivers that you felt differentiated between the 3 organizations you have listed here for us?
Well, it's interesting that if you take the financials out of it, the similarity between the organizations is striking. So each of the companies, and I really would say that for all 5 that we ended up doing interviews with, a passion about providing care in a way that makes people much more ready to seek care. And so we've been very impressed. Aaron and I have had an opportunity on several occasions now to visit the St. Charles Clinic because we went over there early on in the process, and that is something that you really come away with, is that the practitioner is just excited about the job that they're doing, and that really translates. But even from a corporate perspective, the individuals are really focused on delivering care differently. And I think that's what separates it from the current delivery models, which are unfortunately, or as a matter of practicality, focused on efficiency and profitability. And while we don't want to throw profitability out the window, our goal here really is to, we believe if we deliver higher quality care on a more consistent basis, we're going to achieve the savings that we need.
Last question I have. Can you help me visualize what one of these centers look like? Is there a receptionist at the front? I mean, I picture a traditional doctor's office, right? A receptionist, you go back into a waiting room, or into a waiting room first, then to an exam room. There may be 1, 2, 3 doctors. Help me visualize what one of these centers look like.
One will probably be pretty standard, somewhere around 1,200 square feet. There is a waiting area, but not just St. Charles, but other of the references that we talked to said it's almost wasted space because you don't wait. You have an appointment at 9:20, and when you get there at 9:20, you're taken in. And so they joked with Charles that he was complaining about the fact that they bought 2 chairs for the waiting room, and there was no need to spend the money on the second chair because nobody's ever sitting around. But I think that really is, so you would have a very small waiting area, but there's no receptionist. The staff in the clinic would be the physician or nurse's assistant, and nurse practitioner, depending upon how you do that, and then a medical assistant of some kind, and that medical assistant would probably bring you in and do some preliminary labs, and then you would see the doctor. And 2 exam rooms, just as you might envision at any physician practice that you've been to, fairly standard. And if you look back, I didn't include them in tonight's materials, but if you look back at the August 2016 posting, there are actually some photos there of what a clinic exam room would look like. But it's like any other physician's office that you've been to. Okay. But about 1,200 square feet. And size might change a little bit depending upon whether you had any specialized equipment. St. Charles has 2 exam rooms, a very small waiting area, an office for the physician, a lab room where you do blood draws, and then they have a small conference area, and they're actually considering whether or not that conference area is serving the purpose that they intended. They thought there might be a need for some family consultations or things like that.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Walker?
So you mentioned that Parkway already has a facility. Is they have a building that they are going to donate to it, or what do you mean by that?
CARE ATC already has a clinic that's located geographically within the Parkway School District.
So is that a quick trip clinic?
I don't know that it's designated for Quick Trip. That I can't answer, but I don't think, I think that their intention is that that site would be the Parkway School District's clinic site.
So that's, okay. So it would seem to me, though, that we would all share in that benefit. If their employees are gonna be using our clinic, then
Yes.
I would just struggle with that.
Would we be able to go to their clinic, is your question?
No.
No.
No. Why are they the only ones that are receiving benefit? Because CARE ATV already has something in their area.
Okay, so the CARE ATC clinic located off of Olive, which is in Parkway School District, that would be shared by Parkway, Pattonville, us, and QT also utilizes that space as well. So it's not like QT is the only company that can use that. We're all gonna share that, but that's also helping cut down our costs because we don't have to build another location in Parkway's district. Does that make sense?
It's helping
No.
Parkway's cost.
It's helping Parkway's costs, not ours. Parkway's seeing a couple $100,000 in savings because of it. Am I misunderstanding that?
Well, I think it's two things. I'm sure that some portion of that is attributed to the fact that the build-out costs won't be as great. But I think it's driven more by, if you remember what if we think about our feasibility study and taking a look at our actual claims data, the same would have been true for Parkway and Pattonville. So it may depend upon where their population is. So they may have a higher degree of, a larger number of regular office visits. And well, we might have more people who are going to see specialists. So if they have a larger population and a greater percentage of their population are standard office visits, they're going to recognize a greater dollar savings because of that differential. Whereas if we had more people who are being referred to specialists or who are seeing specialists, while the clinic would serve as a gatekeeper, they wouldn't necessarily be achieving the same number of dollar savings for that. So I think some of it is attributable to the build-out, but some of it would certainly be attributable to the data based on the population that Parkway has and their current utilization. But I will bring I'll provide some follow-up information for the board at the March meeting. Well, I know Mr. Hain had a question, I know he had a question, so.
And I think, yeah, they're related.
I'll make sure that we get an appropriate answer. And if I've misspoken in any way, I'll make sure I apologize for that.
Are you done?
I think so.
Okay. I guess the question that I have, and it's kind of related back to that, is every school district offers a different benefit plan. We have 3, in the past we had 5 or 6, we've tailored. Is there a potential with 50% of our employees and retirees using this service, is there an additional savings that's not in here that we could recover by making tweaks or changes to the current system that we have? Because the current system we have functions very well the way it is now. If we're doing this 50%, our current policies and levels that we have may need to change accordingly, and is there a potential for additional savings along there?
So the concept, the way that our program operates today is that we have a plan design that spells out for, depending upon which plan you're in, if this happens, your costs are this. And we work with United Healthcare, they provide our network, and That's how we access physicians and hospitals, and they negotiate rates on our behalf. And it's all based on plan design. So I think there's been greater standardization as a result of the Affordable Care Act, but you know, prior to the Affordable Care Act, you would have seen variations. Like we were very proactive at Francis Howell, and we covered wellness visits at 100%, irrespective of what plan you were in, because we felt there was advantage to getting in for your annual physical, and et cetera, et cetera. And Parkway may not have done that. But I think that the advantage, so that's that model. The clinic really takes a different approach, because it depends a little bit less on the plan design, because the physician is going to approach you where you are and provide the care that you need, and the services that they're delivering are covered by the fee that we're paying the care ATC or care here to provide those services. So my plan design is a little bit less important, because whether it's a physical or a well woman exam, or I have an earache, so right now there's a differentiation. So if I go to the doctor and it's this, my office visit might cost $225. And if I go to the doctor and it's something else, it might be $300. And now really when I go to the doctor, it doesn't make any, if I go to the clinic, it doesn't make any difference what it is. It's the same cost because the doctor's there and they're not differentiating based on disease state. So I do think that as we, and maybe I'm anticipating a question that wasn't there, so I do apologize, but I think as we get more mature, we're going to have to take a look at what is the preferred methodology, and we might use that as an opportunity to incentivize people financially to make use of the plan or the approach that delivers better quality care at a lower possible cost. So we do it somewhat now with our 3 plan designs, but I think there may be some greater opportunity to do that. But plan design becomes a little bit less important because whatever I'm being treated for, physician, it's kind of the same cost. It doesn't make any difference to them.
It would be particularly beneficial to the high plan, because at this point in time, they have an out-of-pocket cost that is a $156 per office visit, our reduced model, because that's what they're actually paying out of pocket. But with the new model, they'd only be paying $25, the way that you described it.
Plan.
So that would be a greater benefit to those people.
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions, board?
I just want to make sure I understand the numbers that we're looking at. This is showing us that we saved $63,000 the
Yes.
first year.
Yes.
Okay.
So as Kevin mentioned, we started this conversation in 2016. So there's been a lot of work that has gone into even bringing us this far. So I want to certainly say thank you for everyone who's been involved in that activity, because it's been a long road, but it's a very large project as well. So if we're going to make a change like this, we need to be confident that we have all the information we need to do it appropriately. So thank you. Anything else, board? Great presentation. Lots of good questions and dialogue. All right, next on our agenda is superintendent comments. If we haven't noticed yet, Dr. Mary Hendricks Harris is not with us this evening, and Mr. Supple has done a great job sitting in for her. Mr. Supple, do you have any comments this evening?
Thank you, Mrs. Cope. Certainly, you know, as we began the meeting this evening, our thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends of the families in Parkland, Florida, for the tragedy that they suffered. I would just like to reassure the board that we make every effort to stay involved with our local law enforcement and to find ways to help keep our children and our staff members safe. But there are some things that are impossible to completely prepare for. And so just know that it's an ongoing effort, and I'm sure that as we learn more about what actually transpired through our monthly SRO meetings, we'll be having some conversation about what can we learn and what can we do better as a result, because our goal is to always keep our kids safe. On a happier note, this is February, and so our students and staff are honoring Black History Month. They'll be taking a look at a variety of topics, researching various leaders and their influences, and exploring cultural and demographic changes, so kind of exciting. Last week, we hosted our 3rd annual We Love to Code event. So schools organize different activities to help provide students with an opportunity to learn about computer science and coding. This year, MasterCard was a sponsor for some of our events with a grant, and so we certainly want to thank them for that. And in addition to the funds, MasterCard provided some staff who helped with the I Love to Code events at 4 of our schools. So we appreciate the human resource as well as the financial resource. Last week was National School Counseling Week. We have a great team of counselors who work hard every day to support our students in school, careers, and life. We thank them for their work and recognize that they play a key role in making Francis Howell a great school district. February 7th was National Signing Day, and more than 60 of our student athletes signed national letters of intent to play sports at the collegiate level. Not only do our students excel in their respective sports, but also in the classroom, and all 3 of our high school signees had a cumulative GPA of at least 3.34. So congratulations to all of those talented young men and women. Francis Howell has announced the recipients of our Teacher of the Year and our Support Staff Employee of the Year. This year's winners will be recognized at the Howell Fame Award ceremony May 7th, 2018. Since the last time we met, the district hosted its first Meet FHSD Day. So we had over 250 candidates who came in and got to learn a little bit about Francis Howell and all the great things we do. Thanks to Mr. Lane and others, they got some good input on their resumes. And they had a chance to meet our administrators and network with them. It was really a very successful day. And the feedback was extremely positive. And I just would echo a comment that was made at one of our staff meetings. Kudos to Mrs. Simpkins for thinking differently about this and approaching it from a whole new perspective and bringing to life a really exciting project that we hope will be stable as we move forward. We had our Francis Howell Special Olympics basketball tournament, and over 25 teams and 200 student athletes participated. And this is the 4th year that we've been offering that. So they get together from across the district and a way to show how much the community cares for them and for each other. So I'm very excited about that. And then just as we wrap up, just again, thanks to our facilities department for what they do every day. We had an opportunity to thank some of them today, but you know, we joked a little bit earlier about the changeability of Missouri's weather, and so you never know. We might have a snow day sometime soon, and while we have very few of them, when they come along, those men and women do work very hard, sometimes in overnight hours or very early morning, in order to make sure that our building is safe and that our students and staff are safe. So they really go above and beyond on a regular basis, and we thank them for all that they do.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Supple, for all your help this evening. Board, next on our agenda is upcoming meetings. Please note that February 21st is a special joint board member meeting. That will be held at the Orchard Farm School District, along with St. Charles City Council, the City of St. Charles School District, and our district as well. Networking is at 6:30 and the open session is at 7. And that is at the Orchard Farm Administration Early Learning Center. I think we have a good representation going from our board, so thank you for those who can attend. Our next board meeting here in the Francis Howell School District is March 15th. If if you'll take a look at the agenda and see if we need to add or change anything on that listing.
The one thing I know that you're providing us some additional information on the worksite clinics. If we could get that sooner, possibly sooner rather than later, so we can make sure we can get any questions fully vetted before that meeting, since that is an approval for that meeting. That'd be great.
Board, anything else? Administration, anything else to be added or changed there? Okay, great. Let's take a look at our April 5th meeting. That will be the first meeting after our election. Anything to add or change there? Okay, great. Board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Fourth. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lang, by roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Adjourned.